Today I'm with the first pick. My top 50 preseason big board comes out later this week. I'm going to give Ran first crack at telling me everything that's wrong with it. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. This is episode 290. And Ran, there are 240 days till the 2026 NFL Draft, Pittsburgh, PA. 123 days since the last draft concluded. So we're getting there, man. We're getting there. How you doing? You were giggling coming into this like a middle-aged man, hopped up on some candy bars. How's it going over there in your neck of the woods?
Well, I just finished my Chick-fil-A lunch, so
okay.
I'm feeling really good, and I had a Chick-fil-A cookie, so I'm feeling really good about myself. But I see you got you got your mathing today. You got all your numbers and days prior, days past. I got to keep up. I got to be on my toes today.
Well, I have on my other St. Lawrence sweatshirt, which is making me smarter. And for the low price of $30,000, it can make you smarter too. That's going to be my running joke for the rest of the season as we get through this thing. Hey, let me ask you this. You talk about cookies, and you know I'm a big cookie guy. And I know producer Sharon is a superhero guy. But quickly, Batman's your guy, correct?
Correct.
So me and my 13-year-old spent a lot of the summer rewatching all the Batman movies going back from 89 up to 2022, The Batman. Batman's now my guy. Batman's a bad dude if you disregard that stretch with George Clooney and Ben Affleck. Robert Pattinson, underrated. So I just want to be on board and let you know that I'm a Batman guy now. And our task this draft season is to find our Batman in this draft class. How about that?
Let's do it. And based off of the little bit of your list that I've seen, I see you came around on another guy that we talked about this summer that we'll get to when it's time.
Yeah, and if that dude was wearing a Batman suit, I wouldn't even ask any questions. I'm just running the other way because he is built for the role. All right, just so we're on the same page here, I release my preseason top 50 big board every August, ahead of the college football season. So it's not so much gospel, Ran, just a starting point. So a roadmap that takes us 240 days from now to see where we're going to eventually end up. And it's also fun to look back at see which players that were balling out beyond expectations. I look back at last year's list. Cameron Ward was 24. He was number 1 overall by the time it was all said and done. And some other names, Carson Beck had at number 6. Not a great season, transferred to the U. And a guy I think we both like, Deion Walker, Kentucky defensive lineman. I had him 14, through the roof expectations. He battled injuries, ended up being a day 3 pick for the Bills. And he has a chance to be great. But that just goes to show you a lot can change, in this case, 240 days. And that's why we're doing this thing. So you ready to get going?
Let's do it. Let's rock.
All right, I'm going to throw you a little curveball here because before we get started, we're going to talk a little news of the day because Cutdown Day as we record this is at 4 p.m. later this afternoon. That's Eastern time, Ran, because sometimes you run on Central time. That'll be 3 p.m. Central time. I want to get your thoughts as a former front office guy, 17 years, evaluator, of course, general manager. Let's start with Kenny Pickett because you've been saying this pretty much since Kenny Pickett was signed in Cleveland. He is not long for that team. Aiden O'Connell got hurt as the backup in Las Vegas. Kenny Pickett is now Geno Smith's backup in Las Vegas. At all surprised about that move?
No, wasn't surprised because I think prior to them getting a deal done, I think he would have been subject to being cut today. And again, we're talking about, they have a log jam at the quarterback spot. We've talked about it time and time again. However, we're talking about a guy who did not play this preseason that was, considered to be competing. So he has yet to play this preseason dealing with a hamstring injury. And so Aiden O'Connell, like you said, went down with the fractured wrist or broken wrist, whichever one it was. And they had a need for a veteran at the quarterback position in the backup spot, because now you go from if something were to happen to Geno, then now you go to a rookie backup. And so I know Pete Carroll would like to right the ship and keep them competitive. And for everything we say Kenny Pickett is not, he does have a winning record as a starting quarterback in the league. He's 15-10 over his career. And so, Sharon, please stay out of my ear with the Super Bowl champ stuff because Big Dom, the security guy, is a Super Bowl champ too, and had nothing to do with the product on the field. So I'll just leave it at that.
In Kenny Pickett's defense, and as a Steelers fan, he has been not infuriating at times, but he didn't live up to expectations. He had to go in last season when Jalen Hurts got banged up, and he held his own. And that's exactly what you're looking for in a backup quarterback. Short time duty, don't run the car off the cliff and allow us to be where we need to be when the starter gets back out there. So I understand that on every level. He would have had the chance to perhaps play in Cleveland, but that's such a crowded quarterback room and so many other things going on that he may have been happy about the opportunity, and I'm sure it made things a little easier for the Browns in terms of them sorting through what their quarterback's room's going to look like as we get through this. All right, let's move on here. We've talked a lot about Trey Hendrickson, the Bengals edge rusher this summer. I'll ask you this. Did the Bengals win with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart previously? Shamar Stewart held out for a long time, didn't get the deal he was looking for in terms of the contract language. Trey Hendrickson signs essentially a one-year deal that gives him a $14 million raise, so he didn't get the long-term deal even though he's 30 years old. Did the organization, the front office, quote-unquote, win? And what does this mean, if anything, for what Jerry and Micah Parsons are working through in Dallas?
Well, I'll say this. I will say initially, yes, the Bengals won because they did not have to necessarily come up off a precedent in how they do business. They gave him a raise, which, it's standard at the spot. If you're Trey Hendrickson, you're happy right now because you're getting $30 million no matter what this year, but your future is still in doubt moving forward. And in terms of does this have any bearings on Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys, the big difference here is Trey Hendrickson's deal starts with a 3, and what Michael Parsons is looking for starts with a 4. So it has zero bearing. It has zero bearing other than the court of public opinion and the timing of it. So Trey Hendrickson will now be ready to roll week 1, and Michael Parsons is still very much in doubt for Dallas in week 1.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think the other similarity remaining is that Jerry Jones shares the same planet as the rest of us, but everything else is different in Dallas in terms of how he does things and how he's done things historically. We talked about the Netflix documentary, and it is
phenomenal.
A lot of fun to watch if you're not a Cowboys fan looking to get Micah signed. Less so if you're Micah and a Cowboys fan. All right, you got a couple minutes left here. I want to ask you front office perspective during roster cutdowns because this is an incredibly busy day for what you do. And I want to bring up a couple guys, and you tell me perhaps where things went wrong for them. Hendon Hooker released by the Lions, former third-round pick. Malachi Corley released by the Jets. Year 2, hasn't even begun year 2 as a former third-round pick. And my guy Kyle McCord, 6th-round pick, didn't have a great preseason. They traded for Sam Howell, and the Eagles did. So Kyle McCord's also out of a job. So what is there, if anything, to take away from the evaluation process where we, quote-unquote, love these guys, and I like these guys a lot, to where we find ourselves right now?
Yeah, well, Hendon Hooker, he just has not had time on task since returning from the ACL injury. He wasn't going to play behind Jared Goff. And the offense he came from, he's an intelligent young man, but the offense he came from at Tennessee really didn't do him any favors in transitioning. And then Kyle McCord, that was more so your guy than my guy, so to speak. I just couldn't get Ohio State out of my head, and him having the weapons he had and them not having success. And then Malachi Corley is just the difference in a new scheme and having, new people come in. He wasn't technically their guy. So now as they build moving forward, you can bring in all of your guys that know how you want things done.
Yeah, and Malachi Corley came from an offense at Western Kentucky where they just gave him the ball and let him do the rest, and that didn't necessarily translate quickly to what he was trying to do in New York. And there were reports that he wasn't melding with the coaching staff, sort of what you hinted at there, Ran. So fingers crossed Kyle McCord still makes the Hall of Fame. I got faith in you, Kyle. We'll see what happens with Hendon Hooker. He did come off that ACL injury when he came out, and that certainly affected his abilities. But it's crazy to think we're living in a world where Joe Milton is still in the league and Hendon Hooker isn't. Both came from Tennessee, and I think it's fair to say Hendon had a much better final year at Tennessee than Joe Milton did. But that's the NFL, man. It's for real. All right, when we come back, I'm going to take a sneak peek at my top 10 big board and going to get Rand's thoughts on what he loves, and that may be a short conversation, and all the things that he doesn't like. We'll do that right after this break. Double thumbstick. All right, Rand, I've been dying to do this forever. Hold on a second. Here we go. This just in, breaking news. Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift have announced their engagement. Producer Stryker would like to know your thoughts on that. You got thoughts or not?
I'm going to pretend my mic and my earpiece don't work right now.
All right. And Producer Stryker said once Rand says he doesn't care, we can move on to my big board. So let's do that. So we are on record. Congratulations. I hope it lasts forever. I want everyone to be happy, but I also don't care about people's business. unless it's football. So let's talk some football here. All right. By the way, we're living in a world where two people in their mid-30s are getting married, and we're supposed to have a reaction to it. Why'd you wait so long? There's my question. All right. Here we go. Breaking down the top 10 prospects. And if we have the graphic producer, Sharon, you can throw it up there. I'll read it for the people listening. And remind me, Rand, I got to do a better job of talking about these players along with the teams and the positions they play for, because sometimes I forget folks like to listen to this. So number one on top of my list is Peter Woods. We talked about him. All these guys we've talked about in summer scouting, so you can go back and listen to that. And I also use summer scouting to inform sort of how I shook out this list. So Peter Woods, defensive lineman at Clemson's number one. Caden Proctor, tackle out of Alabama's number two on my list. Your guy and Lige Douzable's guy, Keldrick Falk, edge rusher out of Auburn. Went back and watched him before we did the summer scouting edge rush. Had that conversation, and I don't know what I was watching. And I'll pause here because I want to ask you something. When I watched Keldrick first over the summer back in May, I didn't love it. Then I went back and watched him, and I had a different opinion of him, not based on anything other than I just watched more. How often does that happen when you're evaluating in the league, and how do you guard against it? Because you don't want to be missing out or over-exaggerating your evaluation of players if you just don't have the full picture.
No, it happens. And I mean, you could have just had a bad day, Ryan, which is perfectly fine. But one thing I like to do when I'm watching guys, and I got my pen here, so if you see me flicking my pen, I'm in that mode right now. But what I typically like to do is I watch a set of games and I take notes on that particular year, right? And then I'll write my evaluation. And then when I come to the current year's tape, I treat it as a completely separate thing. I have my eval already up, but then I take completely separate notes. And if they're repetitive with what were in my notes from the year before, then they're repetitive, which means that's who the guy is. And so I try to take two objective looks at guys. So when I'm coming back and I'm writing my final report, I could talk about areas where, okay, this guy did improve in this area based off of what I saw the year before. Or I can say, he's still the same in these areas, so that kind of is who he is. So I try to take two objective looks at the player, which I think helps guard you against any biases that you may see on tape.
No, that's great advice, and that's important. And one of the issues we face here when you're watching 400 guys, sometimes your time is limited. But that's what summer scouting is all about. So thank you for that. Number 4 on my list, Spencer Fano, right tackle out of Utah. Number 5. And another guy you turned me on to, Caleb Lomu, left tackle out of Utah, 1-year starter last year. He'll obviously be starting again this year. Number 6, Ran Carthon's adopted son, Caleb Downs, safety at Ohio State. Remember, Ran and our buddy B-Mac talked to Caleb and his brother Josh this summer. You can check that out on NFL and CBS on YouTube, and that's a fantastic interview. Number 7, Francis Mawigoa, excuse me. I'm just going to take me forever to get his name right, and I apologize, Francis. Right tackle out of the U. Number 8, TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson. Number 9, and we can start this conversation here, Arch Manning, quarterback Texas, in case you're just back from the moon. And number 10, Antonio Williams, wide receiver out of Clemson. So let's start with Arch. I will tell you I have him at 9. I think you know why, and then you can tell me if that's just crazy talk. I don't think he's coming out. He's only played 2 games. I joked if his name was Archibald Manningham, and he wasn't relating to the Mannings in any way, he just played 2 games, so was a 5-star recruit and had all the other physical tools, we would consider him a fringe first-rounder if everything goes right, and probably a day 2 guy, because we just haven't seen a lot from him. And again, if he's going back to school, I don't want to waste time talking about him when we could be talking about other guys. So I have him at number 9 for now. The reality is if he were coming out and he said he was coming out, he would be QB1 and probably the top of this list. Your response, sir?
So I would say my one area of critique would be you watched him, so rank him where he should go, right? And so
that's what I tried to do.
Whether he comes out or not, I mean, you've done the work, you've seen him, so you need to put him where you feel his skill level is, not whether he comes out or not, not even based off of character stuff, because I'm sure somewhere in this top 50 list, there's going to be some guys with some character concerns. Yep. Like, let the character concerns drive your final big board. This initial big board, we're just basing it off of the physical ability, the physical skill, and how they stack against the other guys in their area. So for me, Arch would have been much higher. Just based off of what I saw. And I'm not even thinking about the last name, just what I saw in the flashes of the 2 games. If he can play consistently like that, I think it'll be a no-brainer. But however, he has to do it. And I can't just, crown him just based off of flashes. I need to see consistency.
Yeah, shout out to Denny Green there. That's also great advice. Are you able to separate the name from the player based on one start and a lot of playing time in the game before that when Quinn Ewers went down? Can you do that?
Yeah, I can because I
Okay.
mean I don't know his dad. You know what I mean? Like I've never met Cooper. I've never met Archie. Played against Eli. Don't know Eli. Played with Peyton. Know Peyton. Have a good relationship with Peyton. But those things are totally independent. I mean, there are other people on this list that I'm close with, family members, or I know people in their family that I have to grade them objectively.
Okay. No, I love it. So yeah, maybe I went the other direction a little too far, having Arch at 9, but he is still my QB1, and we'll talk about some of the other quarterbacks later. But let's talk. Tell me what you think of the top 5 there, and anything that you would do differently about what you see. Peter Woods, Caden Proctor, Falk, Fano, and Lomu.
You know, and you talked about it. I like Keldrick Falk for what he is. Turning on the tape, I expected to see a more dynamic pass rusher. And I think he's a solid pass rusher, but I thought his impact was in the run game. So I would probably have him a little bit down. And, you know, compared to a guy like Caleb Downs, I would have him up. I would have Arch Manning up a little bit more for me. I like the physical tools of Caleb Lomu. I need to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I will say there is a reason why a player like Fano, they moved him from left tackle to right tackle and put this kid in. So I think it's there, but I just need to see a little bit more.
Yeah, and like I said, my big board comes out Thursday, I believe, as you're watching this. So that'll be August 28th, and I go into great depth in the top 10 about what's what and who's who and why's why. Keldrick Falk is still not 20 years old, and the reason I have him there, and I think you and I talked about this. One of the concerns I had watching him was I didn't want to get caught in a Tyree Wilson situation where athleticism through the roof, length through the roof. Tyree was much older. He had transferred to Texas Tech because he didn't get a lot of playing time at Texas A&M. This is different in that Keldrick looks the part physically, freakishly athletic. He's only 19, and a year from now, he could be a completely different player. Caleb Downs is 5'11" or whatever he is. I don't think he's going to grow 2 inches, and maybe it doesn't matter. He's a fantastic player as well. So part of me is betting on the projection of Falk turning the corner. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense because you want to have some projection and some upside, you know, there. But I just think for what you're hoping for out of Keldrick Falk, you've already seen in Caleb. You know, from the moment he stepped on the field as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, he led Alabama in tackles and then moved on over to Ohio State and became the catalyst of their championship defense. So you've seen it, you know, over the course of 2 years. This will be his 3rd year now. And so to me, that's more of a proven product than what Keldrick is. And they're essentially in the same, you know, recruiting class.
Yeah. And the other thing that, you know, he ain't a wise man, but you call him a wise man, like I say, don't overthink it. And always come back to Kyle Hamilton and Brian Branch. If Caleb Downs is showing you who he is, hey, guess what? That's who he is. If you have to squint, I think Keldrick Falk's probably a squinter at this point. You agree?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So you have to squint to sort of see what it looks like in the future. But if it ends up being what you think it is, you also don't want to miss out on whatever freakish version of, you know, Javon Kersey ends up being at the next level. Shout out Florida Gators. How did I do that? And Tennessee Titan. I'm on a roll today. All right. I'll ask you quickly, and then we'll get out of here. TJ Parker, number 8. I was higher on him early on in the summer, and I sort of, you know, stacked things at the top of the board here. You okay with TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson at 8 here? He reminds me a little bit of James Pierce Jr., a little bit of Mike Green with the hair on fire approach to playing that position. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with him here because I think if you're doing the edge, I think he is probably the top edge guy. There'll be some guys on the list that we'll talk about here, you know, in the coming segments that I don't think are close to him in terms of being an edge rusher.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting because a lot of these guys in this draft class at edge rush, and this is a deep edge rush class, are closer to 285 than they're closer to 250, and that's sort of a weird anomaly in this class. I don't know if that's where the direction the edge rush position is going, but TJ is 265 unofficial, so he looks more to be the part of what a prototypical edge rusher has been in the last few years anyway. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other quarterbacks on this list, and there are only 4 total. And we'll also talk about some of the quarterbacks that aren't on this list and why I'm sure people are going to be super happy about it and be very rational when we have that conversation. And we'll do that after this break. All right, Ryan, we are back. And if you're watching, that graphic there are the only 4 quarterbacks that made it inside my top 50. A year ago, I think I had 7 or 8 guys at the quarterback position. We talked about a couple of them. Carson Beck ended up going back to school. Connor Wegman ended up transferring. This time around, Arch Manning, number 9, we just talked about that. Number 11, Garrett Nussmeyer out of LSU. He also returned to school. He made my list last year at pick 48 and started strong and then hit some road bumps down the stretch, struggled with turnovers and inconsistency. But his dad's NFL quarterback, currently the OC in New Orleans. So he looks like a coach's son. Number 15, our guy, Fernando Mendoza, who transferred from Cal, and we talked about that this summer as well, to Indiana. And, of course, Drew Aller, producer Sharon's guy, producer Striker's guy, Penn State quarterback, who also returned to school. So, initial thoughts on this list and where I have these guys situated, and then we'll talk about some names that are perhaps glaringly not on this list. Clay Kubnik, Lenore Sellers, and even others, and we can talk about that in a second.
No, I don't have a problem with this list. I think we've talked about it, on the show, and we've talked about it just in our numerous conversations about players. This is a make it or break it year, in my opinion, for Drew Aller.
Right.
I wouldn't argue against him having him at 17. I wouldn't argue against him having him out of the top 50, if I'm being honest. Because, I'm looking at my list right now, and I had him as my 3rd quarterback at the time, above Fernando Mendoza when I did this list. I can't say that he's probably there now. However, the more I watched on Aller, the more the arrows start to point down. So again, you recognize the physical tools, the size, the arm strength, but then it's, becomes a little bit more to playing quarterback. And so that's why I say this is going to be a really big year for him. He has 2 weapons in the backfield that's returning. The receiver position is supposed to be better and a more experienced group this year, because I do think that hampered him some last year, having the inconsistencies at the receiver position. But this year is going to be a make it or break it year for him.
Yeah, and you talk about, and that's what Penn State fans will tell you, well, he didn't have anyone to throw the ball to. Well, Tyler Warren wasn't just some bum they got off the street to play tight end. He was one of the best players in the country. But the wide receiver position was lacking, and it's hard to push back on that. But they got my guy Trevor Pena transferred him to Syracuse. They have a couple other transfers coming in. So I think the bottom line is there are no more excuses to be had. He's a quarterback built in the lab. He's actually a really good athlete, even though he's 6'5" and has a huge arm. He just has to put it together. And one of the terms our buddy Rick Spielman likes to use was sometimes these quarterbacks are too robotic and you have to get out of that. If that's who you are early in your career, is there any way to get out of that and to feel more free-flowing, to play more like a Jaden Daniels, for example, or a Caleb Williams, as opposed to being a get snap, read 1, read 2, check down, or run? Like, how do you change that DNA of a quarterback?
Yeah, last time I checked, you can't change DNA. So I think if that's who you are, that's who you are. That's and there's an offense for it, right? Like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, those guys don't fit. I mean, now everyone will say, "Oh yeah, they can," they'll definitely come play for us. But there was a time when that style of play didn't fit every offense, right? And so I think at this point, he kind of is who he is. I think the confidence will improve, and just some of the natural feel for the game will improve with time on task. But just who you are, style of play, like I don't even know if that's more mama and daddy, just in terms of how you were made and your body structure. I think that's more of that than actually someone molding you and teaching you how to play.
All right, let me follow up with this, because I was thinking about this, and we've talked about this player before because you were there when he was drafted, and sometimes, we remember history being different than what actually happened in the moment. Jared Goff, obviously first overall pick, but he struggled early on in his career. Did he change who he was, or is that who he was? He just had to grow into that role and needed the experience and so on and so forth.
Well, I think if you watch Jared, and I remember writing in my notes and in my final report on Jared, you watch him throw the football, you could tell he had been in everybody's quarterback camp since he was 5. Just because of the natural ability to throw the ball. I think what Jared had to learn early on in his career was how to process information and then get the ball out. And I think that improved with more time on task. And then if you saw the way when McVay came in, how McVay, was able to adjust to what Jared did well. And then I'm assuming Ben Johnson did the same. You know what I mean? So he obviously got better and is one of the better starting quarterbacks in the league. And I think he was recently recognized as one of the top 100 players in the league. But he got better, and that was with time on task. But his style of play has always been the same.
Right. So there was never any thoughts of him being too robotic coming out of Cal, for example. Speaking of Cal, let me ask about Fernando Mendoza. During the break, I said I can't envision a situation where Arch doesn't have success this year, just because that just feels like who he is. I don't know if Mendoza, I feel like he's going to ball out at Indiana. And we talked about the offensive line issues at Cal and the lack of playmakers at Cal. Did have a running back, but not much else. Is there a situation where it's anything other than arrow pointing up from Mendoza based on a better offensive line, better playmakers, Kirk Cignetti, all the things that seem to sound like they're going to lift him up and perhaps push him into the first round?
Yeah, and I think this kid he's going to excel in this system, in this offense. He'll be better protected, like we talked about. And how we were talking about Drew Aller and how I was kind of like, well, we got to see. And then I look and I have Fernando on this ranking that I have from whenever I did it. And my arrow was pointing, I have an arrow pointing up for Mendoza, which in my mind, he's already surpassed Drew Aller. Just the more you watch like this, he did a lot with a little at Cal. Now, they did have a running back that transferred. They had a tight end that transferred that I think is going to surprise a lot of people this year. And so let's just say he had weapons. He wasn't very well protected. But through all of that, he still was able to stand there in the face of pressure, delivering accurate, on-time ball. And right now, I'm not sure if any guy on this list, including Arch, has the ball placement that Fernando Mendoza does.
Love it. All right. Before we take a break, let's talk about the names that we don't see in this list. Cade Klubnik, who you saw over July 4th, and Lenore Sellers, who we've both talked about. I have them in the 50s, and I think I have Lenore in the 60s. That can all change. It's just sort of a preliminary situation where we are here. No John Mateer, no Nico Iamaleava, no Carson Beck, no Sam Levitt. Shout out to Pete Prisco in Arizona State. What do you think about that, these names being left off the list, and should some of these names perhaps be higher?
No, for me, I got, Lenoris and Cade kind of clumped together in that same vein. And for different reasons, they're two different style, players and quarterbacks. The one thing I worry most about for Lenore Sellers, and he has things he needs to clean up, but he's a freakishly talented person. I just wonder if he's going to get caught in that gift and curse of the Anthony Richardson comparison.
Right.
Because there are so many things from physical stature, style of play, even the little bit of clips I've seen on the Netflix documentary of the SEC or whatever, their dispositions and their look is even very similar. So I wonder, are we going to be able to objectively see what Lenore Sellers is not, can or can't be, and not hold what we've seen out of Anthony Richardson against him?
No, that's exactly right. And by the way, Cade Klubnik, Clemson, Lenore Sellers, South Carolina. You can check all these players we're talking about, Summer Scouting Series, wherever we get your podcasts, our YouTube channel, NFL on CBS. All right, Ran, let's take another quick break here. When we come back, I'm going to take a look at some of the players you pointed out to Producer Stryker and Producer Sharon that are too high on my list and some that are too low, and we'll talk about those names right after this break. All right, Ran, let's take the old kid gloves off here, and you can give it to me straight. Players that are, here you go. He's rolling up his sleeves if you're watching. His forearms are so big, Sean, he can't even get his sweatshirt up past his wrist. That's how thick he is. He's been doing push-ups before the show. I've got to get that in before he starts taking shots at me. Let's hear a couple names that you have that's too high on my list, and I'll spoil it for you here. Number 14, I have LT Overton, edge rusher out of Alabama. That's a little too rich for you, so perhaps tell me why, and if there's someone else you'd rather have above him as an edge rusher, you can give me that too if you want.
Let's just start with I wouldn't even necessarily call him an edge rusher. We're going to call him an edge defender. I think he's a first and second down edge defender. I like his size, his strength, and he is physical, setting edges, taking on pullers. Like, I love all of that about him, but I just think that he's a tightly wound guy. You can see the stiffness, and I just think he's a very average pass rusher, and I think he's ineffective off the edge. I don't think he has the necessary bend to win on the edge against those tackles. And just in my opinion, it looks and feels like a day 3 pick to me. And for guys who are first and second down edge defenders, like, I feel like you can find these guys. You don't have to necessarily take a high pick. You know what I mean? If you're going to take and I'm not saying someone's going to take him at 14 overall, but we're talking about like just pure edge. Like, I think you can find these guys later in the draft and in lower spots. And I just based off of your top 50, there are numerous guys, whether edge or other positions, that I feel are significantly higher, or I have significantly higher. And I'm going to pull up my list in real time here as we're talking about it. And I actually have him, of the edge class of the guys I've seen, he's ranked number 8 for me. So pretty hard for me to have him at 14.
All right, man, shade. We get it. What else you got?
And so my next guy that I have that's on the too high is offensive tackle Isaiah World, the Nevada transfer to Oregon.
Yep.
He's a guy, like, he's athletic, he's big, he's long, he tries to use his length, to the best of his ability. I just saw, even on the Nevada tape, because we haven't seen the Oregon tape yet, I just saw an inconsistent product, right? And I saw an inconsistent product at the competition level that he played at Nevada. And so I do think there's something there, but this just feels more developmental tackle. I think there are other players below him at other positions that are more proven products that are ready. Now, I'm interested to see, how he plays this year with Oregon with quote unquote better coaching. That's what is believed, that there's better coaching at Oregon. We'll actually see. But I just see a guy that just isn't there. And I don't think the Nevada tape was dominant enough for me to just project him to be a top 25 player in this year's draft class.
Yeah, no, and I get that. And I will say, with the World, a lot of it is projection, just trying to see if the measurables match up with what you want to see as a player. And I remember talking to a scout when I first started doing this a while ago. And when you're drafting guys at the FCS, for example, they need to dominate. Like, they need to be difference makers. They need to be the best player on the field, and it shouldn't even be close if you're going to try to make that leap to the next level when you're talking about drafting these kids, whether it's day 2 or day 3. And Isaiah didn't dominate at Nevada, and that's not FCS, obviously, but it's not Power 4 either. As for Overton, I look, man, I appreciate the comments. He's 6'5", 280. He is that sort of unique edge rush body that we've seen this year. He's not yet 21. He'll be 21 during the course of the season. And you're exactly right. He is much better against the run than the pass. So there's some projection there as well. But I can't push back on anything you said. If he's your edge 8, he's your edge 8. I'm trying to think. I had him as my edge 5, I think. So there's some other names I know that we quibbled about in terms of what that looks like at the next level, whether it's Ruben Bain Jr. or out of Miami or Tyreek Sapp out of Florida. And the other thing, and we talked about this edge rush class is deep, and to your previous point, you don't have to take them here. You can get similar value, perhaps 80% of what you're looking for late day 2, early day 3, and that informs how the rest of your board falls out. What do you think about the idea of my little theory about you got to dominate at the lower levels, and then just sort of projecting Isaiah World to, and I wrote in my notes, he's not the athlete Josh Connolly was coming out of Oregon, but I think he has some athletic traits that can perhaps translate if you can put it all together.
No, I agree 1000%. Like the guys that make the transfer up, if you will. Like you would like to see them dominate at their level because we've had guys that we've talked about during the draft process where it was like, oh, well, this is the competition level he played, but it's like, okay, but he dominated. He did what he was supposed to do,
Right.
at that level, which makes you like him. Like I'm looking at Micah Hughes, who transferred from Tulane to Oregon, right? Like this is another guy, and this is the running back. Like I'm excited to see him because he played really well at Tulane and was a 1,200-yard rusher or whatever it was, and now he gets to move up and go against a higher level competition at Oregon. And so if he's able to continue to play at that level, then now we're talking about a guy that could be a day two pick. But that's what you would like to see, all of the quote unquote lower level guys dominate, their level. I'm thinking back to the first Adrian Peterson, right? So
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson that played at Georgia Southern back in the day, he was a 2,000-yard rusher. I think he won the Walter Payton Award. Like he dominated at that level and then came into the league and carved out a role for himself. I want to say he was a fourth-round pick by the Chicago Bears, but eventually, carved out a role for himself as a second back, third back, but played really well on special teams. But at that level, he did what he was supposed to do, which was dominate.
Yep. No, I get it. I ain't going to push back too much on that. So I'm going to give you some names on my top 50 that are below 14 where I had LT Overton going, and you tell me if you would take this player or LT Overton. At 20, you had Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame.
Easy.
Running back U is going to take a running back U. 21, Avian Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson.
Yes.
23, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State.
Yes.
Dang. All right, I got to go do this over, producer Sharon. 24, your guy, Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. Also just 20 years old, had the ACL in January.
And I would have to say yes again because I had Jamar McCoy above Avion Terrell on my corner rank.
And one more name here, Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon, who's a better athlete than Terrence Ferguson, second-round pick last spring for the Rams. I had him 33 on my list. Who you taking?
Oh, I'm taking Kenyon Sadiq because if he plays to the level like I believe he's going to play to this year, this guy will eventually work his way into the top 25.
Okay. All right. Well, message received. Let me put it to you that way. But you know what? This is why we do it. It's a starting point, not an end point, and we'll see. I'm often proven right. At least that's what I tell myself, and we'll see how this plays out 240 days from now. Hopefully not 242 days from now, because if Overton goes on day 3, then we're going to have a conversation. All right, let's take one more break here. I'm going to end on a happy note. We're going to find out some players that are too low on my list, guys that need more love, according to Ran, and we'll do that right after this break. All right, Ran, we're going to take this back to middle school. Who wins in the push-up contest? You, me, or producer Sharon? And just for people that don't know, producer Sharon can probably do 500 push-ups while sleeping. So I'm just going to ask you because none of us are in our 20s, but you're a former professional athlete. Sharon ran track somewhere, he says, and I'm me.
Listen, I'll tell you this. Sharon wins in a landslide even if you combined our push-ups.
Facts.
He wins. I'm not afraid to say that.
That's all he brags about in the break, so I wanted to give him a little love. All right, let's talk about some players too high on this list. Too low on this list. Let's end on a positive note. And two shockers here, producer Sharon. He went with a running back and also a Florida alum. So I'll let you start things off with everybody's running back one, Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. I had him at number 20. I asked you before the break if you would take him higher than 14. So clearly you think he deserves to go higher. Is this a Ashton Genty effect, or is this solely Jeremiah Love as a baller effect?
No, this is just based off of Jeremiah Love. And I think this guy is extremely talented. He's big. He's explosive. He can hit the home run. I think the one area of his game where I have a little bit of questions that I think is on the above average level is the vision. Because I saw a couple runs where he was running up the back of his blocks. But, man, when you get this guy in space, he's explosive and big. And if I'm looking at the list right now, like at minimum for me, I'm never going to argue your top 10. I could have a difference in opinion. But for me, like I would have him right now. You have Ruben Bain Jr., for the edge guy out of Miami at number 12, and I like Jeremiah Love a lot more than I like Ruben Bain at 12, and so he would be that high for me because again he's RB1. I do think the kid down in Texas, who is extremely talented, I think he has a chance to Yeah, I think he has a chance to challenge him for that RB1 spot if he's fully healthy. But I still like Jeremiah Love, out flirting with the top 10 right now, based off of your list, not my own.
He was running with a knee injury last year too. If he'd been healthy, who knows what that offense looks like down the stretch. The other thing, and it's an important thing you bring up, and we'll talk about this throughout the draft process, especially as we get closer. We do a lot of horizontal or vertical sort of rankings here. When we start doing our vertical boards, that's sort of how you suss out who you think more highly of based on a bunch of things. But right now, if you told me Jeremiah Love was more impactful than Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher out of the U, I wouldn't push back too much on it. But again, this isn't written in stone. This is written in oatmeal, as our buddy Rick used to say. The other guy, the Florida standout, defensive lineman Caleb Banks, you turned me on to him as well. He's a first-round talent. I had him at 27, man. What are you hoping for here?
Man, I'll just say this, man. He had a dominant 2-game, 3-game stretch, and right. I know there are a ton of people who believe in his ability, and he has to show it. But my God, if he plays to that level, then he's another one I would have above Ruben Bain and his teammate Tyreek Sapp. And I know this isn't the kill Tyreek Sapp portion of the show, and I would never do that to my fellow Gator. However, I just think there were some edge rushers in this year's draft class that I wouldn't say Tyreek Sapp is better than. Most notably Mike Green and Donovan Ezeraku, JTT from Ohio State. I like all those guys not significantly, but I like those guys more than Tyreek Sapp. And so I would have had him below those guys. However, we're talking about Caleb Banks, and I think Caleb Banks, if I'm looking at it, based off of this list, he belongs in the top 15 to me.
Fair enough. I ain't going to push back on that. It feels like, and you and I have talked a lot about Peter Woods is, barring something crazy, is locked in as DL1 as we sit here. And it's interesting the names you mentioned. Mike Green, first-round talent, some off-field stuff, saw him fall into the second round. JTT, we talked about him a lot as a first-rounder. I think he was undervalued and slept on. He went in the second round to the Colts. Who was the other name you mentioned?
Donovan Ezeraku.
Donovan Ezeraku. Struggled against the run early last season at BC. I thought he got better. Quotation marks undersized, and that he's 245. Maybe he's up to 250 now. And he went in the second round, which felt about the range. So, again, I ain't going to push back too hard on that in terms of what that means for Sapp out of Florida. But I hear what you're saying about Caleb Banks as the defensive lineman. And choo-choo, go time. I think Ran is ready. He's got a big day. He already had Chick-fil-A, so I don't know what's next for you for the rest of your afternoon. But that is it. You can check out my all top 50, my preseason big board. Comes out Thursday on CBSSports.com. And tomorrow, August 27th, we're going to do a little live show, 12 noon, I believe. That's 11 Eastern, Ran. And we're going to take some mailbag questions. We'll talk about what the upcoming season looks like. And next week, got a mock draft coming up. So there's a lot to do, a little time to do it in. College football is here. Check out With the First Pick, wherever you get your podcast. Scan that QR code. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will see you guys in the next one.